In the space of 2 years, Julian Alvarez has become one of the most decorated footballers in the world. Now, though, he's ready to leave Manchester City behind as Atletico Madrid agreed to pay £82 million for him. Conor Gallagher looks like he'll join him at Atletico. We'll look at the reasons behind his imminent move to Spain. Hi, good evening. Welcome along to the hour-long transfer show. So much is happening as we head towards the final 3 weeks of the window. We'll bring you a detailed look at all of the developing stories. And life's pretty sweet if you support West Ham at the moment. 3 significant signings in the space of 4 days. And Aaron Wan-Bissaka could be next. We'll discuss the new setup at the London Stadium. No sooner is Jadon Sancho back in the first-team picture at Manchester United than he's linked with a move away from Old Trafford. We'll look at his options and the complex situation of ins and outs at United. Last season, Sancho was a teammate of Mats Hummels at Borussia Dortmund. Now the veteran defender could be on his way to the Premier League. We'll tell you who he's talking to. And Dani Olmo was one of the key men behind Spain's victory at the Euros. It's earned him a move. We'll bring you details of where he's headed. Yes, Mark McAdam and Tim, I've forgotten your surname.
Thornton.
Tim Thornton. I've only worked with Tim for 20 years. Tim Thornton in the studio with me. Right, we're going to start with Manchester City. I can remember that name. Julian Alvarez. How close is this to being done, Mark?
It's very close. It was a huge deal that we brought to you earlier on Sky Sports News. It was one of those moments where you went, wow, that's a huge fee, and what incredible business this will be seen as for Manchester City, considering they signed Julian Alvarez in January 2022 for around £14 million from River Plate. The deal with Atletico is agreed, a total package of £82 million, which works out around £65 million up front as a guaranteed payment, with add-ons around £17 million. This is a huge deal for Julian Alvarez and for Atletico Madrid. You don't see many La Liga sides outside of Real Madrid and Barcelona spending this kind of money on one player. We're not expecting personal terms to be a problem for the player. We know there's been a lot of noise over the course of the last couple of weeks about a potential exit from Manchester City, and the 24-year-old is getting his wish. He had a desire to leave Manchester City, and he's getting that opportunity to link up with a side that may be Real Madrid's main challengers in La Liga this season. I find it incredible that Julian Alvarez, a young player not really known by many people on the world stage when he joined Manchester City, is leaving Pep Guardiola's side as a double Premier League winner, a Champions League winner, a Super Cup, a Club World Cup winner, 2 Copa Americas and a World Cup as well. He has gathered the lot, hence why the price tag is so vast. And you can see his appearances at Manchester City last season having a real impact in the Premier League and Champions League. The time on the pitch at 75%, and with goals and assists at that ratio, you can see the development, you can see the player, and you can understand why Diego Simeone wants to add him to that Madrid side. So, huge deal, and one I think a lot of Manchester City fans will be sad to see this player coming to the end of his City career, but you can understand exactly why he is as coveted as he is.
So, Tim Thornton, what does City do? Do they stick with what they've got, or do they twist and replace him?
First thing to say is that City are well covered in attacking positions. That said, they don't have a natural replacement for Erling Haaland as a number 9. But in the past, we've seen them play with a false 9. We've seen that be very, very effective for them, and they've been very successful. They do have a lot of attacking options in different areas. Pep has said, though, that they'll only buy a first-team player if they sell a first-team player. So it does open the door for a signing, but Oscar Bob has been outstanding in pre-season. And I think this is a little bit like the Cole Palmer situation. He's now at a point in his Manchester City career where he needs to play regular first-team football. So this might now be an opportunity for him. James McAtee has had 2 seasons at Sheffield United, 2 very successful seasons with them on a personal level. He's done really well for the Blades. So, again, coming back in, an opportunity for him to perhaps impress. And Savinho, another player who was outstanding in La Liga last season, a player that I think there's a lot of excitement about. He will also want to play. So they've got lots of options in there. If they do make a signing, then I think it will have to be a versatile forward, someone who can cover different positions, as Alvarez did. But I'm sure City have got a contingency plan. I think Pep's quite relaxed about the situation. If the right player becomes available, then there's every chance that Manchester City could make an addition. But it would have to be the right player at the right price. If not, they're well placed with the players already in the squad.
Do you know what's incredible, Mike, about this business? If Manchester City have sold their backup striker for more than £30 million than they paid for Erling Haaland, that puts it into perspective as to just how good they have done in this scenario.
Yeah, let's expand that. So they bought Alvarez for 14 million. They're selling him for 82. Does this just show how good City are at doing business?
I think they've been exceptional. There's two parts to that. Not only have they traded incredibly well with regards to their first-team players. When Pep Guardiola is satisfied he has got the most out of a player or he's comfortable with them moving on from the football club, he says, no problem. He's so relaxed, lets them go. And you've seen it with Jesus, you've seen it with Zinchenko, you've seen it with a number of Manchester City first-team players that have been moved on when the time is right for the club. That's something they've done exceptionally well. And they have also generated huge funds with regards to their academy players as well. You look at some of the players that have left that Manchester City under-21, under-23 setup recently, and they've generated in excess of 100 million for those players that aren't even in the Manchester City first team. So they are a model of how to do things. They certainly have invested very heavily in the infrastructure, the setup, the academy, to develop young players, and they are using that to their advantage. So I think, yeah, like Chelsea, they are leaders when it comes to generating funds from some of the younger players. So, you know, you have to take your hat off to the work that they've done. And the thing that I find amazing is that they are so comfortable and relaxed with the scenario. There's no panic button. There's no rushing around. They're not, oh, what can we do? We've got to replace someone. They've already got a plan in place. It's almost like that succession planning that exists at other Premier League clubs is in place at Manchester City. And that is one of the great things about their transfer windows. They are very comfortable with whatever business they do, both in and out.
That said, it could all change if Erling Haaland picks up an injury between now and the end of the transfer window.
Tim, but do City have to change? Mark says they've got a plan, but do they have to change plans? Because there is so much football coming up. There's an expanded Champions League. There's that 32-team Club World Cup coming up next summer. Pep likes a small squad. Is he going to have a bigger one?
I think he's got enough players in there to cover all competitions. I think they might have to adapt a little bit, but some of these players, you ask them, do you want more game time? And they'll tell you, yes, I want to be on that pitch. I want more minutes. Would Jack Grealish want more minutes than he had last season? Would Oscar Bob want more minutes than he had last season?
Rodri wanted fewer minutes than he had.
He might be the exception to the rule, but he's such an important player that he has to start for Manchester City. But I think in the attacking positions, they've got variety. Kevin De Bruyne, of course, was injured for a big part of last season as well. He'll want to play this season in particular because it could be his last at the club. So they've got good options. I'm sure they'll be looking at the situation, and if there is an opportunity to strengthen, they'll take it with the right player at the right price at the right time. But you want a club, if you're a Manchester City fan, where it's calm. Everything's calm. They're winners. They're winners for a reason.
OK. Does the Alvarez deal, will that affect the Omarodion deal to Chelsea?
Absolutely, yeah, because they wanted to get a replacement in before they allowed him to leave. What I can tell you is that negotiations continue. We're told that they are progressing between the two clubs. Several sources have told us that an agreement is close. He's only 20 years of age. Like Alvarez, he's been playing at the Olympics. And although it's a similar figure to the Conor Gallagher deal that we'll discuss in a moment or two, these are two very separate deals. But Chelsea have been in desperate need of a striker. He could just fit the bill for them, but certainly the Alvarez deal will help the deal to Chelsea. OK,
well, all right then, let's talk Conor Gallagher. You picked it up there. We thought this was all done, but last we heard he was still waiting to get on a flight. So what's going on with this, Mark?
He's been delayed at check-in. Yeah, so, this is something we speak about in every single transfer window, and this is the perfect example of a situation that we find ourselves in. The transfer dominoes, where you are waiting for one player to go to one club, which frees up space and finance for another player to leave another club and come in, and this is very much we've got the situation we've got here. So you've got Conor Gallagher. We know he has agreed a deal with regards to Atletico Madrid. Chelsea and Madrid are happy with the €40 million package. Conor Gallagher is just in a holding pattern, currently waiting to head out to Madrid to go through the formalities of the medical and to finalise personal terms. But of course, he can't really do that until they have freed up the space and finance, which links to Omarodian and, of course, Julian Alvarez. So it's a little bit of a just wait for that to happen and then that can happen. You actually have to feel a little bit sorry for Conor Gallagher because it feels like from the outside he's being ushered out of Stamford Bridge. Probably not the send-off that he or the fans would like, but this is just him being a commodity of football and a homegrown player that's come through the academy. He's used as 100% PSR profit. So therefore, unfortunately, sorry Conor, you've got to go. I think it's only a matter of time now before he gets the nod up to say, yes, you can head over to Madrid and look at the next phase of your career now. But like this all relates to is just that domino effect with one player going to one place and another player going to another.
Well, Mark's just alluded to it. The Gallagher deal continues a trend of Chelsea selling their homegrown talent. Enzo Maresca was asked about it on their US tour. This is what he said.
I also think that the intention of the club is not to sell players from the academy, but it's the rules that at the end you have to do it. But it's not also only for us, it's for all the Premier League club. And it's a shame because we all in Italy, we are, Totti with Roma, he was 20 years with the same club, one club man. I love that. We all love that in football. And the fans, they love that because they want to see them in that player. But because of the rules, probably something is now it's different from compared to the past.
So Maresca says it's not a Chelsea issue, it's a football issue. Is he right?
I think he is, yeah. Steven Gerrard, heartbeat for Liverpool for so long. Ryan Giggs, the Neville brothers, Beckham, heartbeat of Manchester United for so long. And I could go on. Chelsea have lost so many key players who could have been the heartbeat of their team. And as supporters, would you want a homegrown talent in your team or somebody that's come from another club or another country? And it is a sad situation. Even this summer, we've seen in the Championship, Archie Gray, a homegrown talent at Leeds, moved to Tottenham. It is a sign of the times. It is because of the rules that these deals are happening, but I don't think it's great for football.
Yeah. What this shows, though, and you can see from this graphic here, is the quality that Chelsea squad possesses within the academy. And this was something that Roman Abramovich was actually really instrumental in. He said, I don't want to go and spend 20 or 30 million pounds on players every single transfer window. I want to develop them in-house. And that's what you've seen from that academy. Now, because of the rules, it's almost, as Enzo Maresca says, the situation where they go, well, actually, business-wise, and this is a business decision, we have to make these changes and we have to sell these young players because this suits the business model that we have in place at the moment. I think, though, and I will just disagree with Enzo Maresca ever so slightly, if Conor Gallagher had scored 21 goals last season and 12 assists, someone like Frank Lampard would do for that first team, do you think Chelsea would be selling him? I think they would turn around and say, no, he is too good. We cannot lose this player. But because his numbers and metrics didn't quite stack up in the way that perhaps they would have liked, they're saying, actually, we need to use him as a vehicle to make money for our finances.
Chelsea looked like they were getting somewhere under Pochettino at the end of the season. He's gone. Maresca's in. What chance of stability at that club now?
Well, you'd have to ask the owners that question. You'd certainly look at it and think, well, they've got rid of Mauricio Pochettino, who really started to look like he was gelling that team together. They had a heavy investment in the transfer windows that preceded his arrival. And you were starting to feel like they were developing a squad and they were buying some young players. There was a profile. There were new people in place in their recruitment department. And they were all just sort of starting to get together on the same page. And then they make this change with regards to Enzo Maresca. Now, Chelsea fans will be hoping that Enzo gets off to a brilliant start. They play the right type of football. the team starts to gel and things go to plan. But if Chelsea are in the bottom half of the Premier League table after 10 games, the whole dynamic changes again. And that's where people, particularly the fans, will start to point at the owners and saying, hang on a second, this is at your door now because you continue to make these changes and they're not working for our first team. Stability is key, particularly in transfer windows where players want to go into a club like Chelsea, and they'll go there because it's one of the biggest clubs in the Premier League, but they want to know they've got a head coach who's going to be there for the long term.
I think Pochettino as well had to ride the wave of criticism. He came out the other side, the fans could see progress, they could see that a corner had been turned, and suddenly he's gone, and he's starting again.
Indeed. West Ham fans will be thinking, do you know what? We like what's going on at the moment. A third signing in as many days, and there could be more. It's Hammer time after the break. Hello again, this is the Transfer Show. We're going to talk West Ham United in a moment, but first, Manchester United. So, Tim, Jadon Sancho, welcome back in the fold, and now there are suitors. Tell us where we are with this.
Well, you'd expect that, given his form for Dortmund last season and the fact that we're not sure whether he's got a future at Manchester United, but PSG are exploring the conditions of a potential deal for him. So this is very much at the early stages. They're looking into this to see if this could be possible. We don't expect personal terms to be a problem. We understand that Sancho could be open to a move. So, in short, dialogue remains open between the two clubs, and this is one to watch, one that might develop over this transfer window.
Or it might not, Mark, because United have got striker problems with Højlund injured and Zirkzee perhaps not ready, so Erik ten Hag said. And he's also said that Jadon Sancho could possibly fill in. So surely they wouldn't sell him in those circumstances.
You'd certainly back against Manchester United doing something like that with their injury concerns. But ultimately, like we've already touched upon in the show today, sometimes these decisions are taken out of the hands of the head coach and the management team. It's about what is right for Manchester United commercially and financially, because that's the decision we're going to take here. Sometimes it's not about the player or what the head coach wants. Erik ten Hag has said over the course of pre-season that Jadon Sancho potentially could be a false nine. He could be that player that comes in and fills for the injured Rasmus Højlund. He's got that experience. He's played in the big games. He had that fantastic run to the Champions League final with Borussia Dortmund last season. He's clearly in a much better vein of form than he was when he was struggling at Manchester United. So therefore, it might be one of those interesting scenarios where PSG would have been thinking, actually, we can get a bit of a deal here. Suddenly, because of the injuries, because of the things that are happening at Manchester United, they might find the door gets closed quite quickly on a cheap deal. If you want him, you're going to have to pay big, and that will be the only way you get Jadon Sancho.
We mentioned this a couple of times, Tim, but I haven't had a chance to ask you. Do you think Manchester United look better behind the scenes now than they have done in the last few seasons?
I think you can see there's a plan. There is a strategy to what they're doing. With recruitment, you can see the transfer strategy. They're looking at younger players, they're looking at developing players. And also, you can see that they're aligned in terms of what they're doing now. So I think it could be a turning point for them this summer. It will take some time. I think this is a rebuilding job, and they've got to close the gap on the teams at the top. But I think every transfer window, if they can close the gap a little bit, then at least they're making progress. And Ten Hag staying means they've got stability this summer as well. So it's an opportunity for them, but they will have to perform better in the Premier League than they did last season.
Mark, I think Erik ten Hag has been quoted as saying he's the second most successful manager behind Pep Guardiola in recent seasons. If that's the case, what is a good season for United?
Well, if you speak to the Manchester United fans, they'll tell you winning the Premier League and another cup is a good season. You know, let's be honest, that's minimum. That's minimum requirement for Manchester United fans. Of course, you have to look at the bigger picture here, and this is a football club that's developing, growing, and trying to compete at the highest level where Manchester City and Liverpool have been at for the last 5 years. And you've seen a huge gap to Manchester United and those two sides that we just mentioned. Arsenal have bridged that gap and got close to it. But again, the challenge now is for Arsenal not just to challenge for the Premier League, but to win the Premier League and to add silverware to the cabinet. And Manchester United find themselves in a very similar situation. So I think, you know, Erik ten Hag will say, you know, keep backing me. I've won 2 trophies in 2 seasons. I've done an exceptional job. I've had injury problems. I've had problems off the pitch. I've not had a proper recruitment strategy like I've got now. I've brought in my own coaches. I've brought in new people around the place. You back me and I'll continue to develop this squad and win silverware. But ultimately, this is a club that adds Premier League titles to its repertoire. And if they don't do that this season, or certainly next season, then questions will be asked.
Well, it looks like West Ham have got some high... what's the word I'm looking for? They've got some expectations. Tim, they've made a load of signings, some pretty good ones, and they've got one today. Tell us about him.
Yep, Guido Rodriguez. He's got real pedigree, this player. He's 30 years of age. He's got 30 caps for Argentina. He's won the Copa America twice. He was part of the World Cup winning squad, and they've got him on a free transfer. So that's looks like decent business, doesn't it, on paper? The reason for that, his contract expired at Real Betis. He's been there for the last 4.5 seasons. So, yeah, it looks on paper to be a very, very good signing. We discussed this earlier on. They look as though they've recruited with that mixture of youth and experience, a little bit of everything in their recruitment. And he's a defensive midfielder, and I think he'll add some stability in there. They got Calvin Phillips in on loan last season. That didn't work out. But this is an opportunity to bring someone in who's proven, and I think he'll relish at this stage in his career the opportunity to play in the Premier League. So it seems to work for all parties, and West Ham fans, we were hoping that he can produce a big season for them.
Mark, I went big in the 5 o'clock hour by saying they're winning the window. Do you agree?
You certainly wouldn't back against them at the moment. As Tim touched upon it, they've got a brilliant balance and a nice mixture of the type of players they've recruited. You know, experienced players, winners, people that have won big trophies. They've got players that have got a nice level of experience across Europe, and they've got players from the EFL as well as other UK domestic recruitment that has been effective for them. So I think you have to say they've been effective. They've been very targeted. They've clearly had a plan for this window. There's been no dithering, no dilling, no sort of trying to be a bit cheap and save a couple of quid here. They've just gone out and got the players they wanted, and they've backed Julian Lopetegui. You could say this is the first time the shackles have been released from Tim Steidten, the sporting director. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way to David Moyes, because he did an exceptional job. But he was more of an old-school manager that wanted to have a say on recruitment. He wanted to have his hand in on the players that they were signing. And he signed some gems for that football club and did very well with it. And you can understand why the players he's coaching, he wants to have a say on. Obviously, that has changed this summer. Tim's been given a much greater authority to go into the market and do things. David Sullivan has always backed the sporting director and the management to bring in the players they want. And you certainly would look at the mix of players they've got from the age of 33 to the age of 18 and everything in between. They have done an exceptional job so far, and you'd have to say they could be one of those outsiders that just pierce into those European placings and cause a few upsets for the big six.
I think getting the manager in place so quickly as well, that was a big tick. So they've got the manager in, they've got the players in, they've done everything early, which gives them a chance to have that stability going into the new season.
Not everything, because they could get Aaron Wan-Bissaka. What do we know about that?
Yeah, work to be done on the fee for this one, the structure and the contractual details. But we understand that Wan-Bissaka is open to the move. We don't expect personal terms to be a problem. But there is a bit of a holding pattern here in terms of deals. But, yeah, that one is moving in the right direction. And, again, it will be another outstanding signing for them.
Time for a break. When we come back, we will talk Dominic Solanke's future at Bournemouth. Will he be there come the end of the window? News on his future, and we round up all the other Premier League business after the break. See you in a moment.
It's time now for your bite-sized transfer update as we go around all 20 clubs. Mark McAdam, take it away.
Here we go, I like this bit. There we go. It appears by magic Arsenal allowing players to leave will be the focus for the remainder of this window. The future of Eddie Nketiah is one player that would be leaving the Emirates potentially. Marseille still want him, but there's no agreement in place just yet.
Aston Villa have allowed teenage defender Josh Feeney out on loan for the season. He went on tour with Villa to the USA, but he's going out on loan to League One Shrewsbury to continue his developments.
Bournemouth are relaxed on their plans to sign new players in this window, but are currently working hard behind the scenes. And significantly, no contact or offers for Dominic Solanke as things stand.
Brentford are in the market for a centre-back this summer. One player they have an interest in is Dara O'Shea at Burnley, but the selling club are asking for a significant fee.
Brighton have made contact with former Borussia Dortmund defender Mats Hummels. That's according to Sky in Germany. The 35-year-old is a free agent after leaving Dortmund at the end of last season.
Chelsea defender Alfie Gilchrist is likely to spend the coming season on loan at Sheffield United in the Championship. He's having a medical at Bramall
Crystal
Lane.
Palace. Oh, sorry there, Tim. I almost got you. Crystal Palace is still in dialogue with Newcastle over a potential deal for Mark Gahey. An improved offer is expected at some stage this week.
New signing Jake O'Brien was on the score sheet for Everton in a behind closed doors 6-0 win over Motherwell. Sean Dyche is happy with his squad as things stand.
Tim Ream's stay at Fulham is about to end after more than 300 appearances. He's heading back to the United States to sign for MLS side Charlotte Football Club.
Dialogue continues between Ipswich and Blackburn Rovers over a potential deal for Sammy Smodics.
Now Leicester are interested in Liverpool winger Fabio Carvalho. He spent last season on loan at Hull, while Southampton recently had a £15 million bid rejected.
The wait goes on for a first major signing this summer for Liverpool, and at the end of their US tour, Arne Slot said the bar for any new signings is high because of the quality that he already has in his squad.
Now, we've been talking about this a lot. Julian Alvarez is on his way out of Manchester City, and for a colossal fee, Atletico Madrid have agreed to pay £82 million for the forward, who won the league in both his full seasons at the Etihad.
As we've been telling you, PSG have held talks over a move for Manchester United's Jadon Sancho, but with the injuries in forward areas, Erik ten Hag may wish to hold on to the player a little bit longer.
Now, Newcastle are expected to announce the signing of Will Osula from Sheffield United in the next 24 hours. The deal is £10 million with £5 million in add-ons.
Nottingham Forest remain interested in Paraguay winger Ramon Sosa, but there's been no breakthrough in negotiations as of yet.
Now, despite signing 12 new faces this summer, Russell Martin is still hopeful he can add more quality to his squad. They're reviewing a potential second offer for Fabio Carvalho at Liverpool, and still like Ryan Fraser at Newcastle, who spent the second half of last season on loan with the club.
Tottenham are finalising a first professional contract for winger Mikey Moore, who's been a hit on their summer tour. He turns 17 on Sunday and will sign a 3-year deal. That's the longest contract allowed by FIFA for a player of his age.
They're getting younger. The summer signings continue at West Ham, where Guido Rodriguez is the third arrival in a matter of days. He follows Crescencio Somerville and Nicholas Füllkrug through the door. They're looking at a right back and possibly an attacking midfielder next.
A great time to be a West Ham fan. Wolves' Daniel Podence could be leaving the club this summer after spending last season on loan at Olympiacos, and there's also reported interest in Pedro Neto from a host of European clubs.
Well, Watford were a Premier League club not so long ago. Now, though, they're preparing for this weekend's opening round of games in the Championship, and they expect more activity in the transfer market. They may face a fight to keep their young midfielder Yasser Asprilla, though. The 20-year-old Colombian impressed last season, but Watford sporting director told us here at Sky Sports News that they're under no pressure to sell.
When a player becomes such an important player, we are also is like a recognition that is a certificate that we did a good job, because so many clubs are inquiring about him. We would like to keep him, and the moment is our player, and we are happy to keep him. At the same time, if it's coming a top club that make the player happy and the club happy, we can sit down and we can consider. but we don't need to sell him. We will sell him just if coming a really top player, and we believe that can be a good step forward for the boy, for the club.
Well, the EFL is back this weekend. Now, we will be live with all 72 clubs this week. Yes, all 72. We start at 8 o'clock tomorrow with every club in League Two. On Thursday, it's the turn of the League One clubs. That's from 7 in the morning. I promise you it is. And on Friday, the wait will be over as the season kicks off. We'll be live with every Championship club from 8 a.m. There we go. Well, more from the EFL shortly when we speak to former Sheffield United manager Paul Heckingbottom. But let's get to Newcastle first. Mark Gahey, where are we with this?
Yeah, huge deal potentially for Eddie Howe. We know they don't have a lot of money to spend in the window, but this would be one of the key players that they're looking at. They want to strengthen the right side of the centre-back options, and talks continue between Crystal Palace and Newcastle over a potential deal for the 24-year-old. We know that Newcastle's initial offer was rejected by Crystal Palace, but they are considering returning with a second offer at some stage this week. As things stand, it appears, despite having an incredible summer for England, that Newcastle are the only team in town when it comes to signing Mark Gahey, which is remarkable. He has 2 years left on his current Palace contract, and to suggest that a deal had been agreed is premature. There is still a little way to go between the two clubs, but the dialogue continues on this situation. So one to keep an eye on, and of course, as always, as things develop, we'll bring you them as soon as we know them. But yeah, things moving in the right direction, maybe a little bit slowly for that man Eddie Howe, but he's certainly getting closer to the player he wants. OK, so Gahey may happen. Newcastle also looking to add at the top of the pitch. What can you tell us?
Will Asula, a young striker from Sheffield United. He's only 21. He's played a fair bit of first-team football at Bramall Lane, had a loan spell at Derby as well. He started his medical yesterday. This is a deal that is close but not yet done. We're expecting an announcement within the next 24 hours. The fee, £10 million up front with £5 million in add-ons. A player that I'm sure will add to the squad for this season, but also one that long-term could be a key player for Newcastle, especially as Eddie Howe has a good track record of developing young players.
Mark, if I was a Newcastle fan, I'd be so frustrated. Richest club in the world, can't spend any money. Doesn't seem fair to me.
Well, you have to remember that Aston Villa fans would also say the same thing. We've had to sell some of our best players just to meet PSR requirements as we go into a Champions League campaign.
But it protects old money, this stuff, doesn't it? If you're Manchester United or Liverpool or whatever, who've historically been in a strong position, you remain there while the new boys on the block can't get there. That can't be right.
And the rules are voted for by all 20 Premier League clubs, of which Newcastle are one of them. Now, to vote through rules within the Premier League, you have to have a majority of 14 clubs. So things don't change easily. You have to have a vast majority of Premier League clubs that say, actually, we want to change the rules. Now, the rules were brought in place to, A, stop reckless spending, and I guess, really, B, do exactly what they're doing with Newcastle, stop sides punching into the top six and taking away a Champions League or a European spot from one of those clubs historically that have always been there. And this is the situation they just have to face. Now, this is the problem that Bournemouth had when Eddie Howe was the boss. They almost grew too quickly. They got too good, too quick. And the rest of the side was just catching up. The rest of the team off the pitch was catching up with what was happening on the pitch. And that's very much the case at play here with Newcastle. They went from 19th to the Champions League, and therefore the club commercially and financially has not been able to catch up just yet. And yes, a lot of those big commercial deals are starting to kick in this summer, so the turnover will get increased, the fan base will develop, they will be generating more income. You saw them go to Australia at the end of last season when the season finished. You've seen them in Tokyo last week. These are big money-spinning tours that are all a part of growing this football club. But as things stand, the rules say You can only spend X amount. You can only lose 105 million over 3 seasons worth of accounts. So therefore, don't break the rules. Otherwise, you'll end up like Everton and Nottingham Forest with a points deduction. And quite simply, there's nothing Newcastle fans can do about it. They just have to accept that the current rules in place stop them from doing that big spending in every window. So they just have to be a little bit more creative and careful in this summer's window.
So if they're creative, does that mean they're going to sell a star like Anthony Gordon?
Well, they could, but Newcastle will want to hold on to Anthony Gordon, to Bruno, to Alexander Isak. They're the players they need to build around. So, yeah, they could sell, and there is reported interest from Liverpool in Anthony Gordon, but I think he will be very, very expensive to replace, and that will be the problem for Newcastle. They want to hang on to their big players if they're to have a successful season.
Yeah, all right, let's take a break now. Dani Olmo's move from RB Leipzig to Barcelona is edging ever closer. We've got the very latest on this one after the break. See you in a moment. Hi there, this is the Transfer Show. Now, a year ago, Paul Heckingbottom was getting Sheffield United ready for the Premier League. Now, he's got to talk to us. Paul, very good evening. Are you missing it?
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, I am missing it, but probably not Not this time of the year, because it's a bit of a frustrating time of the year, I think, for any manager.
Go on, tell us why.
Well, the games are sort of meaningless. It's all about the fitness and preparing players for the first game of the season. But there's no points at stake, and I never like that as a player or manager. And then, while you're trying to manage that and get people ready, you're also trying to manage the ins and outs, and it's probably until the window shuts at the end of August. It's a really, really difficult time.
Paul, Alvarez is on the verge of leaving Manchester City. That means potentially more game time for a player that you know very, very well, James McAtee. Is he ready to make an impact at that level with City?
I think he is. I think he's done really well pre-season by all accounts. I know he's highly thought of there at City, and I know how desperate he is to play for Manchester City, so every opportunity he gets, he's going to try and take it. And I think he'll be given every opportunity to take that. And between now and the end of August, so the next 4 weeks, he'll be trying his hardest to stay there and be in their plans.
Now, Paul, I'm in the studio with Tim and Mike. You cover a lot of the EFL as a pundit, you're manager at that level. How do you think one of the big summer signings, Crescencio Somerville, will get on at West Ham in the Premier League this season?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see how he does, because he was one of the standout players in the Championship. He had a lot of admirers across Europe, I know that as well, and I think West Ham have done well to beat off a lot of competition. Everybody speaks about that gap and that jump between the Championship and the Premier League. And I think for individual football clubs and for teams, it's a huge, huge jump. But I think it's less of a jump for individual players. And he's someone who's a talent. I like what West Ham have done in terms of their recruitment this season, and I think it fits into what they're trying to do.
Paul, you touched on this at the beginning, but give us a bit of an insight into what it's like. That you're a manager, season's coming up, you're trying to strengthen whilst not losing players. What's that like?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think if you asked any manager, this is probably the most difficult time. It's funny because this time of year, or probably in June when people are off and international breaks, many fans, people speak to and say, "Oh, I bet you're glad of the break." But this is not a break. This is when you're probably working at your hardest from the end of the season until the window closing. So it's relentless, it's non-stop. I think as a manager, you're probably saying that you have to take every phone call, you have to have every conversation, because that could be the one that gets you the one player that saves your season, whether that's to get you a promotion or to keep you in a specific league. So, yeah, it's a difficult time. It's a 24/7 time, and it probably will be like this until the window closes. I think the window closes end of August. Then there's an international break the following weekend in September, and that's probably the only 4 or 5 days as a manager where you get the opportunity to switch off.
Do you feel pressure from the fans to get players in?
No, you want to do your best for the club, for the fans. I don't think you ever feel pressure as a manager, because generally you've played, you understand what it is, you're used to the microscope, the criticism. I think when the pressure from the fans is felt, it's usually felt at board level, by owners, by directors, and that probably then passes itself down to yourself as a manager, either to help you get players in or put pressure on you to deliver a result. So, yeah, I think as a manager, as a player, used to the speculation, used to the microscope, I think when that pressure sort of transcends you and goes to the board or the ownership, that's usually when it becomes a little bit more difficult.
We briefly touched on this, but players like Archie Gray, Somerville, Jayden Philogene, going to the Premier League from the Championship. You took Gus Harmer last season as well. How tough is it to make that transition? Do you expect Archie Gray to be a big hit at Tottenham, for example?
Yeah, listen, Archie Gray in particular I do, because I think he's a top player. I'll be really interested to see how Ange uses him at Spurs. He played a lot of the time at right back for Leeds, when probably Archie, his family, myself in particular, would love to see him play midfield. But Spurs have very much played their full-backs inverted and in midfield positions. So for me, I could see him slotting in there straight away, but it'd be interested to see how he fits in. The other players, they're really good individual players. So as I say, they're stepping into squads that are already established in the Premier League. So for them, that's a lot easier than being with a team who then gets promoted to the Premier League. And then maybe, if they're attacking players, not get as many opportunities to create or score. Or if you're a defensive player, you're under a lot more pressure. So I think for individual players stepping up into established Premier League teams, it is much easier than making that step up with your own squad who's been promoted from the Championship.
I'm really looking forward to this weekend because the EFL is back. It starts and we can start to get excited about that. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who are the teams to watch in the Championship? We know Burnley, Sheffield United and Luton, who have all come down from the Premier League, are going to be strong. But who can be the Ipswich? Who can upset the top three there and perhaps get to the big time?
Yeah, well, you said straight away, the teams that come down from the Premier League automatically want to be challenging again for that top six. Leeds are in there straight away, probably most people's favourites. They have lost players, but they've also made one or two good signings. The clubs that have come up, it's going to be interesting to see how they fare. You look at Portsmouth straight away, playing at Leeds in their first game of the season, so those clubs are going to find it tough. I'd be interested to see how Stoke fare. They had an OK finish to the season under Steven Schumacher, and I'd be interested to see how they fare because last season they made a hell of a lot of signings and they've had the opportunity now to settle in. Big club, been well backed all the time. So yeah, it'd be really interesting to see who the ones, like you say, who can break through and make that step up. Another one is Preston, who's been in and around it most seasons and then sort of fallen away and ended up finishing mid-table. They want to make that jump as well into the top six. So yeah, there's probably about 15 teams, I would say, who would target and be hoping to make that top six. But we all know what that Championship's like, and it's a fantastic league to watch, to be involved in, simply because of how competitive it is.
Paul Heckingbottom, great pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. Nice to speak to you.
Paul Heckingbottom. Right, we mentioned Danny Olmo. Tim, what's the very latest on him and a possible move to Barcelona?
Yeah, he's on his way to Barcelona. Verbal agreement we mentioned on a fee in place, conditions met, and pictures from Sky Germany, as you can see, of him at Leipzig Airport. So this is a deal that's looking very likely to happen, I think it's fair to say.
OK, all right, we'll keep an eye on that. That is the transfer show for today. Back again tomorrow, of course. Now, Rangers are in Champions League action at the moment. We'll let you know how they're getting on after this very short break. Enjoy your evening.